Alright, so welcome to our first video notes. Traditionally we'll have things typed out, but these first few are just review. So today's notes are going to be handwritten. So again, this is your intermediate algebra course, and we're doing order of operations, or Pemdas, and today is day 1. Alright. So, the first thing we are going to look at here, I'll just get my notes, is, of course, Pemdas itself. So here we are with Pemdas. You should be familiar with the order of operations, which is what this is. And the idea is that when you're going to evaluate something or solve something, you are going to do it in a certain order. If you don't do it in a certain order, you end up getting a different result, which is not very helpful. So the first thing in Pemdas, and you may have learned this as Gemdas or Permdas or whatever it happens to be, but we'll go over all the specifics. So the first thing is going to be parentheses. So if you see any parentheses or grouping symbols, your parentheses here, or maybe some brackets, you're going to do whatever that operation is first. So whatever's inside of there. After that, we've got E, which is for your exponents. And so that's any time that you have something like 2 squared or whatever with that little tiny 2 or exponent. Alright, after that we have multiplication and division, and I'm going to box them off here because it turns out that they actually kind of go together. Multiplication. Don't know what it is that I was trying to write there, but there we go. And then we've got division. And anytime that you are faced with both of these at the same time, you're always working left to right. So we don't necessarily do it where multiplication is first and division is second. You do it from whatever it is that you have, and you just work from left to right like you would any reading. Alright, and then the last two are addition and subtraction. And again, these ones work from left to right. So if all you have left is addition and subtraction, you take the leftmost thing, even if that's subtraction, which seems like it should be last, and you would do it first. So we're going to go through some examples from this. Alright. So our first example is going to be using this whole idea of Pemdas having multiplication and division and addition and subtraction kind of left to right. So our first example is going to be that we're going to take 14 divided by 2 and multiply by 4. So again, what you're looking for here is the fact that you're looking for parentheses. We don't see any. Then you're looking for exponents. There are none of those. And then we're doing multiplication or division. And of course that's the only thing that's here. And of course you're going from left to right. And then addition and subtraction, which there isn't any. So we are going to be doing multiplication and division. One thing that I do want you to start doing, and we will in our assignment, is rewrite anything that has a division sign, because sadly we are going to get rid of that symbol and we are going to make it into a fraction. Okay, so it turns out that anything that you have as a division sign, pretty much this is the only assignment where we'll have this symbol, otherwise you will be seeing it written as a fraction. So we're going to practice writing it as a fraction, and so instead of 14 division sign 2, we're going to do 14 fraction sign 2, and then all of that will end up being multiplied by 4. So once we rewrite, then we can go ahead and solve, and again, it's almost even easier to see that the first thing that you're going to do is this kind of group here of 14 divided by 2. So we'll do that first and get 7, and then we'll end up with 7 times 4, because we haven't done the multiplying by 4 yet. And then 7 times 4 is going to be 28, and so that's your answer. Now if you went through and ended up getting a decimal or something, that's because you ended up doing 2 times 4 and getting 8 first, and then you did 14 divided by that 8. And of course that, if you take Pemdas literally, is what you would have, but remember that multiplication and division are this group that works from left to right. So under this same idea, we're going to go on to our second example. And it is best practice to, once I write down the problem, that you go ahead and use your own knowledge to see if you can solve it. So you'd pause the video, try to solve it, and then you'd come back to see if you got this answer. So again, taking a look at our order of operations, we've got Pemdas, and it turns out there's no parentheses, no exponents, no multiplication or division, so it's just addition and subtraction, which again moves from left to right. So the leftmost thing that I see is this 14 subtracting 2. So we'll do that first and get 12. And then to that we'll add 4. And so 12 plus 4 leaves you with 16. Notice that I am showing all of my work so that I have something to go back to. And so there are those of you who, especially in middle school, would like to take all of your problems and squish them into as little space as possible, but we are moving away from that. So make sure that you are showing all your work, and I know this seems very elementary, but if you go ahead and show work now, you will remember that you should be doing it later when the problems get a little bit more complicated. Alright, so that's our second example. The next example that we're going to do is, where is it? 10 minus 30 divided by 3. Alright, again, what we want to do anytime that we see division is rewrite it as a fraction. So if we rewrite this with a fraction, we're actually going to have 10 minus, wrong color, 30 divided by 3. And so even then you can definitely see that you've grouped something which is actually going to be what you do first. So the order of operations again is Pemdas, and we don't see any parentheses or exponents, but we do see multiplication and division, and that's this first piece here, or on the right. And so we're going to end up with 10 minus, and then we actually solve 30 divided by 3, and it turns out you get 10. So now we have 10 minus 10, which is in fact 0, and 0 is a number. So it's okay, and it can be an answer. So that doesn't mean that there's no solution. It means that literally 0, the number, is your answer. So that's our third example. Our next example, remember you need to take the time to write out the example first and then see if you can actually solve it. So our next example is going to be 42. Division sign 6 minus 5 minus 2. Lots of subtraction going on here. So again, we're looking for Pemdas, but of course before we get that started, we do see that there is a fraction to rewrite. Alright, so once we rewrite our fraction, which is 42 and then a division sign and 6, whatever that result is, we will then subtract, in parentheses, 5 minus 2. So, taking a look at our order of operations, whoopsie. Alright, we're going to do parentheses first, and we do actually have parentheses this time, so those are right here. So if we rewrite the rest of it that isn't going to be touched by what we're doing, we end up with 5 minus 2, which is 3. Once you actually solve what's in parentheses, you do not need them, so you don't necessarily need to put 3 in parentheses and go from there. So instead we can just say 42 6 subtracting 3. After that, there are no exponents, so we won't be doing that, but there is multiplication or division. There's division here. So we're going to take the 42 6 and we're going to change it into the 7 that it is. And then we'll take that 7 and subtract 3, because now we're moving on to addition and subtraction. So finally in the end, 7 minus 3 is 4, and so 4 is our result. When you do this, and of course my screen is only so big, the idea is that as you're working through the problem, it kind of makes this pizza shape that would end in your answer down here. So you are looking for rewriting each step so that you know what happened to get to the answer. Alright, Our last example here is number 5. And in number 5 we have 30 divided by parentheses 5 minus parentheses 11 minus 9, and then completing both of those parentheses. Alright, so once again we are going to take any division that's there and we're going to rewrite it as a fraction. And so this one gets kind of messy because you have 30, but then you're dividing everything by literally the rest of it. So in parentheses you have 5 minus 11 minus 9, because it's divided by 30, it's divided by that entire group. So this whole group is going to have to go in the denominator. So we have 30, and we'll take 30 and divide it by whatever this sum happens to be. So if you take a look at Pemdas, the first thing that you need to do is parentheses. Now it's interesting because you're saying, okay, well, which set of parentheses? But anytime that you have a set of parentheses, like this first one here, once you go inside of them, you start the order of operations again. So once we're inside of these yellow parentheses, we realize that there's another set of parentheses, and so our first actual attempt at solving this problem is going to be that inner set of parentheses. So that means that we're still going to have 30, and it's still going to be divided by this 5 minus, but then instead of 11 minus 9 inside of those parentheses, we will just write 2. So this entire section here was the innermost part, and that becomes 2. Then we go to the next set of parentheses, and inside there's subtraction, so we can go ahead and do that. So we will end up with 30 divided by 5 minus 2, and 5 minus 2 is 3. And then finally we end with 30 divided by 3, which is 10. And of course, if you went through, having paused this and worked through it and got a different answer, make sure that you're checking to see that you did the innermost parentheses first, then the outer parentheses, and then division. As much as you want division to happen before subtraction, that's not how it works when parentheses are added in. So you just need to be careful. And I do know that especially order of operations and Pemdas is something that you should have been exposed to in your pre-algebra classes in middle school. So hopefully you have some history of this. So that's the end of our notes. And that means that tomorrow on Tuesday you're going to end up getting an assignment to practice this. You'll have about 18 or so problems that you're going to work through. And of course, you're going to want to try the problem, check your answer to see if it's right, and then rework it if you don't get there. All right, so that's it.